4 siblings, 1 inheritance, and a father who had been dead for exactly 6 days when the first one started lying to police, not about the money, about where she was the night he died. This is a composite story, built from patterns seen in real estate dispute homicide cases across the country. Walter Greer was 74, widower-owned, a modest but valuable piece of land outside Asheville, North Carolina, 40 acres that developers had been circling for years for adult children, Renee, Patrick, Connor, and the youngest, Dana, 31, and still living in Walter's guest house, the only one who hadn't moved away. Walter died on a Tuesday night, officially a fall down the basement stairs. Nobody questioned it at first. He was 74. The stairs were steep. It happened. It was the will that changed everything. Walter had updated it 11 days before his death. The new version left the land now worth an estimated $2.3 million to developers, entirely to Dana. The other 3 got the house contents and a modest cash sum each. Renee, the oldest, told police she'd been home all night with her husband. Her husband, when interviewed separately, said she'd actually left the house around 9 p.m. and come back close to midnight. He'd assumed she was at her sister's. She hadn't been at her sister's. Patrick claimed he'd been at Walter's earlier that evening for a normal visit, left by 8 and gone straight home. Cell tower data placed his phone near Walter's property until almost 10:30. Connor had no alibi at all and didn't pretend otherwise. He said he'd been driving alone, clearing his head after learning about the will change 2 days earlier. 3 siblings, 3 inconsistent stories, 1 newly disinherited motive shared by all of them. Detective Priya Anand, who caught the case, said later that what struck her wasn't any single lie. It was that none of the 3 had coordinated their stories with each other at all, which meant either none of them did it and they were each independently covering up something unrelated and embarrassing, or one of them did and the others were lying to protect themselves from suspicion, not to protect each other. The basement stairs told their own story once a forensic engineer examined them properly. The pattern of injuries was inconsistent with a simple fall. Walter's hands showed no signs of trying to catch himself. No defensive bracing, which is unusual in an accidental fall down a full flight. A neighbor's doorbell camera, 2 houses down, caught a partial, low-quality image of a car matching Patrick's leaving the area around 10:15 p.m., 30 minutes after he claimed to be home. When confronted with the footage, Patrick changed his story. He admitted he'd gone back to Walter's a second time that night to talk about the will. Said Walter was already dead when he got there. Said he panicked and left without calling anyone. He had no explanation for why his first story had placed him nowhere near the house at that time at all. Forensic accountants found something Patrick hadn't mentioned. He'd been quietly behind on payments for a business loan, using projected inheritance money as informal collateral in conversations with his lender, conversations that existed in texts the lender handed over voluntarily once subpoenaed. The will change 2 days earlier had made that collateral worthless. Patrick was charged with second-degree murder based on the doorbell footage, the inconsistent timeline, and the financial pressure, though prosecutors conceded they couldn't conclusively prove premeditation versus a confrontation that escalated. The trial turned heavily on the forensic engineer's stare analysis and the financial evidence. The jury convicted on second-degree murder rather than first, accepting that the visit may not have started as a plan to kill, even if what happened inside that house clearly wasn't an accident. Patrick received 18 years to life. Renee and Connor were never charged. Their lies, it turned out, were unrelated to the death. One was having an affair. The other genuinely had just been driving around upset, too embarrassed to admit either thing to police investigating. Their father's death, Dana kept the land, sold it to a developer 2 years later, and never spoke publicly about why. Detective Annan's case notes end with something she said in interviews since. Everyone in that family lied to us. Only one of them was lying about a murder. Figuring out which lie was which took longer than catching the killer would have. If everyone had just told the truth from day one, money doesn't usually create the motive on its own. It just removes whatever was holding the motive back. Subscribe for more true crime disturbing story every week.